Welcome to another episode of Talking Backstage. I'm your host, Tom Lund. Today's guest is Emma Howard. Emma is a third-year acting student at the Royal Academy for Dramatic Arts in London. On this episode, Emma shares with us her experience as an actor, what it was like being in the original Broadway cast of the musical Matilda and Violet, as well as what it's like being a student in a school focusing on the performing arts. Hi, Emma. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thanks for joining us today on Talking Backstage.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So the first question, what schools did you attend? If you attended school in Santa Clarita, or what were your elementary school and junior high school? What was that path for you?
My elementary school was North Park, and then I started going to Rio Norte for like half a year. And as soon as it was like Halloween time, I found out I got Matilda on Halloween. So I had left and went to New York.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, after that I did a middle school in New York called PPAS. Also went to a high school called LOXA.
Right, the Los Angeles County High School for the Arts.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So you kind of hinted at it that, you know, you were an actress at a very young age. What age did you start performing?
I was 4. I believe was the first time I started performing, but my parents would always tell me like you were singing before you could barely speak and all of that.
Yeah, so were you involved with like local community theater before obviously making the jump across the country?
Oh yeah, I did Canyon Theater Guild. I did Escape Theater. That was those two mostly. That was amazing because then I could like build up my friends and my people and my circle of artists, and that's always really, really helpful.
You said, you know, that you got started, it was around the junior high age that you were cast in the musical Matilda. So what was that process like? How did you go from doing community theater to then doing more of a professional style, and then especially going from California theater to all the way into New York? If you could just walk us through that process.
Okay, speaking of like theater at home here, I was in how many productions of Annie, playing Annie, and like I know it's so like it's the role for children who are 11 years old, and They were doing a revival on Broadway, so I obviously was like, I don't even care if I don't get a call back, this is something I need to do. So we went to New York, and then I ended up being in the final 7 for Annie, and in my first Broadway audition ever. And I think that was kind of told me and my family that this is possible.
So then Annie didn't work out, but then if I remember correctly, I've seen some of your other interviews that you've done that not too long after, you know, the Annie auditions, you were able to get cast in Matilda.
I was like, if I didn't get this, I need to get this. And I cared more about getting this, obviously, when I got into the auditions and the process. I was like, I want this even more.
So walk us through, you know, what would a typical day be like for you in the rehearsal process? And then once you get into performances, what were your days like leading up to a show at night?
It was kind of different because we had to do school work as kids.
Oh yeah.
So that's something that I always had to struggle with like rehearsals and everything, just the idea of school. And if you're rehearsing for hours and hours and you still need to get your school hours in, was very, very difficult for me. Yeah, we were there before the adults, all of the kids. We were there to learn the choreography early and to integrate when they came in. So it was like a lot more comfortable for all of us. There were a lot of us, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like there's kids and they don't really know each other. We were young. So it was our first time in New York. Most of us our Broadway debut. So we were all very, very excited and just like going crazy. But the rehearsal process was very, very rigorous and like kind of terrifying for me at first, because it was our choreographers were very strict, but in the way that they were just like, they know what they want, and they treated us like we were professionals, because we were being thrown into this professional world, and that's what we asked for. Yeah, I mean, it was really, really long days, and when it came to opening and everything, it would get really, really hectic around preview time because things are still changeable. And once it's opened, you can't really change very much. And so like they could like cut lines, add things, all of
Sure.
this craziness. They could stop the show. But we did have to do rehearsals all the time, even after it opened. So, and I
Okay.
think people don't even realize that. They think it's just like, oh, you go to the theater and then you do your thing and leave. But it's kind of like an all day thing.
So even once the show's open, you said you're still doing rehearsals. Is that like you would do, say, maybe once or twice a week or once a month just to brush up on everything to make sure things are clean? Or is it just kind of as needed, you guys would go in for a rehearsal?
We had to be in 2 hours before every single show and rehearse anyway. So even if we didn't have rehearsal that day, we still have to come in really early, which was difficult with school. When we had to bring in new people, especially, we had
Okay.
like every 9 months we would bring in a new set of Matildas. We had adults leaving all the time, kids leaving, so we have to have like different put-in rehearsals, understudy rehearsals, because I was an
Oh, yeah.
understudy as well.
So talking about performing at the Schubert Theater is fairly large. And then I also know that you got the opportunity to perform at Radio City Music Hall for the Tony Awards. What's it like performing in front of that large of an audience?
Well, it was the Schubert was big when we were there, but as soon as we went to Radio City, it was like the Schubert was nothing. It was
Right. Yeah, exactly.
absolutely, it was nothing like I'd ever seen before,
Sure.
ever. Just looking out, and it was just rows upon rows upon rows, and it was, I mean, honestly a bit more comforting in my opinion to have a lot of people that you really can't see unless they're in the front row.
One of the things I saw in one of your interviews was when you're, I think it was when you were still in production for Matilda and you were talking about one of your favorite Broadway performers is Sutton Foster. And then you were able to do Violet with Sutton Foster. So what was
Yeah.
that like, performing on stage in rehearsals, being even backstage with her? What was it like being, in a production with someone that you've looked up to?
Yeah, it's daunting at first, especially when you first get the phone call, when you go to the first rehearsal and see the person that you look up to in their element and in how they prepare, and it's very interesting really to watch. But it was she's lovely. She is one of the
Yeah,
most amazing people I've ever met, and you can tell through people's acting, honestly, in their performances, and they're genuine. They're genuine, and I can really
sure.
tell that with her. She, I was an understudy, and she
Uh-huh.
made me feel really, really welcome and really accepted.
So
Yeah.
at a school like Loxa, are you still doing traditional classic, core classes like your English, your math, and science? Or is it really strictly focused more on your art?
We did have like English and economics, all of
Oh,
that
geez.
fun stuff. I was always a history fan, so
Okay, cool.
I love government classes and
Hmm.
economics classes, all of that. Uh, but they do kind of integrate art into the classes, so
Okay.
as to make it easier for us, I guess, to
Sure.
understand.
Do you think that it was easier being at Loxa having the arts incorporated into your core subject classes?
I think it's easier to be around people that have the same ambition and are like kind of that understand where you're coming from. 'Cause I think a lot of what I struggled with when I was younger was people who didn't really get it and didn't really understand why I cared so much or why I couldn't hang out after school because I was going to rehearsals or auditions. It was really nice to have people who understood and who got excited about the same stuff as you did and all of that. Yeah.
Alrighty. So you kind of mentioned that you were able in your work, you were able to meet people that inspired you and kind of helped shape you as a performer. Who are some of those people that you've met in your career that have helped you become to the level of performer that you are today?
The most like amazing people in my life that have helped me to become the artist that I am now are teachers and coaches as well as like coworkers, but I feel like
Sure.
that special bond that you make with your teachers. Specifically for me, like I had a vocal teacher named Renee Arbanovich. She actually
Okay.
works
Yep.
near Santa Clarita, so
Yeah.
that she's really amazing. My dance teacher Gina Newman, who I've known since I was like practically a baby, and I'm so extremely grateful for the bond that I've been able to create with them, and just I think learning things from different people from all around is so important and so crucial to a performer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as artists, we have that ability to make those connections when we're meeting people. Like you said, you were working on a film in Louisiana and you're able to kind of meet other kids that were like you in the same career paths and stuff. And you guys were able to form a bond that way. Do you think that that's something, obviously, that you've benefited from, being able to make those connections with people in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, meeting people that have different life stories and like people who are from different places, people who are into writing, into directing, into not just acting is really, really inspiring to meet. But also the people who aren't actors, like that
Sure.
I meet everywhere, are also very interesting to me. And I think maybe even more so because
Yeah,
their way of life and the way their brain works is very
sure.
fascinating to somebody who, you know, is a performer through and through. It's interesting to
Yeah.
meet different kinds of people like that. Yeah.
You're 3 years into your program studying at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts. I made a note so I knew what to say. So you're 3 years into studying in London. Have you noticed a difference to how they teach acting and performing in England versus how we teach it here in America?
Yeah. Well, I think it may not be because RADA is kind of like the equivalent of Juilliard in America. So
Sure.
I
Okay.
think that they would teach it there, but I think overall the idea of working on Shakespearean text and Jacobean text, what is the other restoration work, Greek tragedies, all of those things, I feel like I didn't know anything about for a really long time. Not to say it's like better or anything. It's just a different
Right.
kind of avenue to get there. And also working on Meisner and Stanislavski, I
Mhm.
think I completely understand it a lot more than I used to.
If you could give advice to young Emma, years ago when you were first starting out, or if you could give advice to this next generation of performers that are in elementary school, what's a piece of advice that you would give them, having seen what your career's done in kind of a short amount of time?
I'd say that you shouldn't do it for anyone else. You shouldn't, if you want to impress someone or if you want to look impressive, I think you're doing things for the wrong reason. I think you need to work hard for yourself. And when you do that, it is like the world of possibilities are open to you.
Well, that basically wraps it up for us. I really appreciate, you taking time out to speak with us today, especially knowing that I know this will air a little bit later, but you're getting ready to fly back to London, go back to school. So I really appreciate, in that crunch time that you could be hanging out with friends, saying your goodbyes before you're out for a year or so, that you took time out to speak with us. I think it's really insightful for these students to hear someone closer to their age, especially, that have performed on Broadway, have performed in film and television, have performed on the Tony Awards. So I really appreciate, you sharing your story with us today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. It's really great.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right, we'll talk to you soon, Emma. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Talking Backstage. To watch other episodes, make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, I'm your host, Tom Lund. I'll see you backstage.